The opponent say switches into Big Man Blastoise, but Big Man Blastoise bulk about to be put to the test. We go straight for the upper hand, and the damage is already done. Welcome back to the channel. As requested by members of my Discord, we're taking a look at Shadow Hariyama with his new move of upper hand in the Open Ultra League. If we think back to Season 22's move update, outside of the move Rock Tomb, the two biggest winners were Sludge and Aqua. Upper hand happens to be a clone of both of these moves, but unlike them has a 30% chance to debuff the opponent's defense, which just makes it incredible. Is this going to elevate Shadow Hariyama into meta relevance? Its main issue is the issue it has always had: it lacks a good coverage move. We're going with Heavy Slam because that is literally the only thing it learns that isn't a fighting type move. To help cover its vulnerabilities and stuff like Psychics and Ghost, we're going with Drapion and Dusknoir. Let's keep the intro short and sweet. Without any further ado, let's get into the battles. And in game one, I'm going to lead Shadow Hariyama into Galarian Moltres, a Sucker Punch user that's going to take neutral from our Force Palms. The opponent says switches into Blastoise. As switch takes a turn, I'm able to fire off the upper hand, instantly rocks Blastoise below half health, and we get that 30% chance of the defense drop. Drapion going to do a pretty good job of absorbing this energy. Hydro Cannon does a little under 50%. I fire off one Poison Sting and the Crunch. Crunch with a debuff defense removes Blastoise from the field of play, and back out comes Moltres. Drapion still very healthy, and the opponent can have a near impossible task of trying to fast move beat me down. These Aqua Tails do around 25-30%. With the Poison Stings, the three come quite close to knocking out. I overfarm, fire off the next Aqua Tail. The opponent recognised the third would come close to knocking out and opt to dump energy. The opponent fire off the Ancient Power. Ancient Power gets the knockout, and we see no attack boost. We're going to send back out Hariyama and just look at these Force Palms. The opponent actually don't tank a single Force Palm and send out Drapion. Hariyama's already got the opponent below half health just from the fast move pressure. I fire off the upper hand forces the first Protect Shield. I'm going to call this is not a Sludge Bomb variant of Drapion. The opponent fire off the Crunch, which is resisted, but unfortunately does debuff my defense. That will now mean the next Crunch will knock out. We're going to invest the Protect Shield, go for the correct one Force Palm and the upper hand. The opponent, desperate to keep Drapion around, invest their final Protect Shield, and the damage is already done. I can just save my final shield for Dusknoir. Crunch from this range removes me from the field of play. The opponent not wanting to concede a farm down send, back out their Flying Bird. They might be a Dark type, but they're insanely low. Shadow Punch almost gets the job done. We Hex farm down. Dusknoir going to take out back-to-back Dark types, and we take that game. Heading into the next battle, we found ourselves a problem. My team ABA weak to Gliscopod. I say switch into one member of the team that should do fairly well into it. Although as switch takes a turn, being a turn behind, the opponent is always going to be able to outpace. We tank the Aqua Jet, return fire with the Crunch. Crunch goes unshielded, rocking them below half health. Game state issues as always present. We actually get denied there. I haven't been denied since like season 10. What the fuck is going on? The opponent send out Malamar. Malamar going to be greeted with the Crunch. Crunch unfortunately doesn't get the defense drop. This is also something Dusknoir doesn't want to see, so I'm going to send out Hariyama. Hariyama, these Force Palms look ridiculous. They're only hitting for neutral, but my god, a lot of neutral damage at that. I go straight for the upper hand, looking to remove this Malamar from the field of play, and I do exactly that. I spam the switch into Dusknoir, and out comes Grumpig. It's kind of absurd to think my Hex is hitting for super effective. Their sideways only hitting for neutral, but the fast move pressure is clearly with them. As you can see, I reach the yellow far sooner than they do. This is almost certainly a dynamic punch bait. Despite having two Protect Shields and essentially forced to shield that move, we die with honour on this channel. I am not shielding a non-stab double resisted move. Is that the right call? Potentially not, but it kind of is what it is. I'd rather die with two shields than shield a double resisted non-stab move from this stupid pig. I've been giving this pig a lot of trash recently. But unfortunately for me, we're going to reverse two shield flex and die with honour. GG's to that opponent. Hariyama having 0 targets in that battle. Heading into the next battle, we see some shadow on shadow crime with Hariyama into the Gator. The opponent opts to instant throw, giving me 2 free turns, and I'm certainly going to take that. I'm going to shield up the Hydro Cannon. The opponent then sends out Typhlosion. We go for the correct 3 Force Palms and the upper hand. Upper hand will certainly force the Protect Shield, as Typhlosion users love to shield everything. Hariyama's bulk about to be put to the test. Thunder Punch simply doesn't get the job done. I fire off 1 Force Palm and the next upper hand. Is the opponent willing to 2-shield their Typhlosion? Of course they are. This is actually perfect for me. I can send out Drapion. The opponent's going to be forced to fire off a Thunder Punch. If they commit to their Blast Burn, I just hit the Aqua Tail. My opponent recognises that. Just settle for the Thunder Punch. Thunder Punch doesn't do much of anything, and out comes Galarian Moltres. Very, very nice to bait this thing out, as Dusknoir isn't going to do particularly well into it. I fire off the first Aqua Tail. The opponent goes straight for the Ancient Power, but this is not Ancient Power range. I'm going to fire off one further Aqua Tail, and then ensure on one Poison Sting off the next Aqua Tail, in case I need to knock that Typhlosion out later. We then pivot into Dusknoir. Dusknoir certainly going to get baited with the Ancient Power. But the opponent's got no energy anywhere, so this is always the move I'm shielding. The opponent fire off the Ancient Power. I look to fire off 3 Hexes and the Shadow Punch. The opponent makes a very nice catch, catching onto Typhlosion. Shadow Punch removes them from the field of play. Back out comes Moltres, 1 Hex and the next Shadow Punch. Dusknoir claims yet another victim. Back out comes Gator. We're able to outpace to the Dynamic Punch. Did I not tell you in yesterday's video? Dusknoir, absolute monster, and gets the entire sweep. GG's that opponent. Heading into the next battle, we see a battle of fighting types. The opponent say switches into Drapion. I can always throw this upper hand before the opponent potentially reaches Sludge Bomb. We land the upper hand and then enter the mirror. Fuck, man. That upper hand is ridiculous damage. That isn't even a shadow variant of Drapion. If that is a shadow, it would have come quite close to knocking out. As the opponent's opting to throw Crunch in this mirror, it looks like it actually is the Sludge Bomb variant of Drapion. As I've got a rank 1, I'm going to overfarm just before the next Crunch is reached. Not playing to CMP, as that would not be a CMP tie. I'm going to win. Back out comes the Panda Bear. I'm going to fire off 1 Aqua Tail and then just keep farming up. I'm not going to dump the next one, because the idea here, or at least the thought process is, I don't want to get fully Karate Chop farmed down and then get CC'd to the face with Hariyama. My plan works out. The opponent opts to fire off the Night Slash and they don't get a boost. I send back out Hariyama. The opponent pivots into Skeledirge and Dusknoir hits the field of play. This is almost certainly a Torch Soul. However, I've already died with 2 shields once in today's video, and I know if I let that move go through, I would get Incinerate farmed down. So I'm going to invest a Protect Shield, go for the correct 3 Hexes and the Shadow Punch. Shadow Punch forces the opponent's first Protect Shield. The opponent fires off the next Torch Song. Here we're just going to fire off 1 Hex and the Shadow Punch. I'm then going to go for 1 Hex and the next Shadow Punch, looking to move them from the field of play. The opponent tried to make the catch onto the Panda Bear. Dusknoir sees it coming in, fires off the Dynamic Punch. Dusknoir, have a chill, bro. This is supposed to be a Hariyama showcase and you are completely stealing the show. Dusknoir once again sweeping, and we take that game. Heading into the next battle, Hariyama into Drapion. The opponent opts to stay in, and that works out quite nice for me. The opponent goes for the correct 7 Poison Stings and the charge move. Again, we're going to call it's not the Sludge Bomb. The opponent fire off the Crunch and then make a very nice catch, catching onto Jellicent. This is why I hate 3-turn moves. It's so easy for the opponent to predict. I'm going to go for good timing. You might ask yourself, why am I going Dusknoir and not Drapion? Well, ideally, we don't want my Dusknoir aligned with the opposing Drapion. The opponent goes straight for a Surf, and that's a huge mistake. Hex might generate more energy and even do a little bit more damage. However, I was never shielding that move, and we're now going to force both protections off this Jellicent in the mid-game matchup. The opponent actually gets super greedy, looking for the Hex farm down. I don't even know what they're doing. Dusknoir commits 0 Protect Shields, the opponent commits 2, and switch advantage is still maintained. Honestly, this Pokemon's busted. The Hex Shadow Punch dynamic combination is just ridiculous. If you've got the means to build this Pokemon, do it. It's just like a cheat code. Back out comes my big Japanese warrior with its huge monobrow, removing Drapion from the field of play. It's Gastron in the back, which would be a problem, but we land the upper hand, meaning Drapion can easily be a Gastron counter confirmed. Lose con, tanking the Earth Power to the face. The opponent will be unable to bait, then reach the Earth Power. So we correctly shield it up, as that would be their win con. We reach the Crunch, Drapion gonna knock out the Snail, and we take that game. Heading into the next battle. Another atrocious lead. Once again, looking to utilise Drapion on the Say Switch, and out comes Lapras. In theory, this should be a good matchup. The non-stab sideways are single resisted. We're hitting the neutral the entirety of the time. This is what stat product's all about. They far out bulk us. This next Crunch will come nowhere near knocking out, and we've already found ourselves in Sparkling Aura range. I don't really want to go down Protect Shields here to try and realign, as if they've got Brutal Swing, and Dusknoir is going to need shields to hide behind. We're going to send out Hariyama, just 2 Force Palms, remove Lapras from the field of play. To be honest, them Force Palms did too much damage. I would have liked more farm, potentially get the heavy slam ready for this wheeze in. The opponent fire off the sludge. We go for one force palm and the heavy slam. Is this the one matchup where this isn't a garbage move? Heavy slam, force to protect shield, and Dusknoir hits the field of play. The opponent's either sludging a ghost type or they're firing off a brutal swing. We invest to protect shield, and it is indeed a brutal swing wheeze in, which ironically is quite brutal. Speaking of things that are brutal, that is not what Dusknoir wants to see in the back. Aqua Jet, a non-stab brutal swing, both will hurt. I'm kind of forced to shield this up as Dusknoir needs to do the heavy lifting. I fire off one hex and the shadow punch. A shadow punch goes unshielded. I'm going to look to catch the next move. We do exactly that. But I think I'm already in brutal swing range. It's not a shadow. Perhaps we survive. I guess we're about to find out. We fire off one hex and the shadow punch. Shadow punch, not really the hardest hitting move. It does force the final protect shield. Yeah, I don't think I'm surviving a brutal swing from there. Unfortunately, this one will end in defeat. You can't win them all. GG's to that opponent. The tough leads continue. Once again, Drapion tasked with doing something on the say switch. The opponent actually overfarms. I could have fired off the crunch instantly, but I'm always worried the opponent might look to make a catch. It's kind of weird that everyone that leads this Glycerpod seems to stay in against Drapion, and I'm not complaining. I know I survived this move. I'm going to fire off the crunch instantly. If the opponent catch, so be it. I need to fire it off before the opponent look to Shadow Claw farm me down. Crunch, force the protect shield, and gets the defense drop. As I got the defense drop, I could have actually sent out Hariyama and went for the resisted force palm farm down. However, what I'm actually going to do is send out Dusknoir, go for the one shield, and full hex farm down. Dusknoir has that magical combination of ghost and fighting coverage, meaning it's currently unresisted in Pokemon Go. The opponent sends out Malamar, we land the dynamic punch, try and catch the foul play onto Hariyama, but it looks like my opponent held their energy and we now get superpowered to the face. However, that doesn't turn out to be too bad for me, as out comes Shadow Gator. As we snuck the force palm, we're able to outpace to the upper hand forces the final protect shield, and the opponent is not doubled up. I now know my win con. Hariyama, thank you very much for your contribution. I'm going to go straight for this dynamic punch. Removing Feraligatr from the field of play. Get that stupid Gator off my screen. When Malamar does return, they're going to need to reach 2 moves. They're not even going to reach 1, as the next dynamic punch is going to be all she wrote, with Dusknoir once again putting on a clinic. Heading into the next battle, that is what we love to see. The opponent say switches into Big Man Blastoise. As switch takes a turn, I can go straight for the upper hand, instantly rocking him into the red and getting the defense drop, and quite literally the damage is already done. The opponent doubled up on Hydro Cannons. I'm going to tank one, hit my Aqua Tail, and look to deny the second. As they're debuffed, the opponent probably recognised switch advantage will not be won, as I could just match shield and Poison Sting farm down. Back out comes the Walrus. I attempt to throw the crunch on the CMP type. The opponent continued to farm up energy. However, the opponent is going to have to throw before the next crunch is reached, and they do exactly that. Drapion has done its job, of course. I'm just going to let it go down and send back out Hariyama. Are you ready for this disgusting force palm damage? Oof, that's brutal. The opponent settled for the Icicle Sphere. Hariyama, not the bulkiest, but bulky enough. The opponent then pivots out into the Pancake. The Pancake also going to fall victim of that upper hand treatment. This pacing, a straight 12 turns, is disgusting. I send out Dusknoir. The opponent wanted none of that smoke, and they concede the match. In the next battle, holy cow, that is a yikes lead. The opponent banks some energy and send out Licky far too thicky. It looks like the Shadow Ball variant, as they just fire off the Body Slam. I'm going to fire off one Poison Sting and the Crunch, of course, using a 2-turn move into a 3-turn move. Ideally, you want to throw 1, 4 or 7, only giving the opponent 1 free turn, hence optimal timing. Licky far too thicky, living up to its nickname, able to tank 2 crunches reasonably well. We can also tank this next Body Slam. Here I'm actually going to go for 2 Poison Stings down the move. Look to keep Drapion as healthy as possible, giving me the best chance of reaching a crunch if Mewtwo re-enters the arena. Out comes Wheezing. Again Hariyama, with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. I'm going to try and reach 2 Aqua Tails. Unfortunately, we do get Fairy Wind farm down. I'm just going to send out Hariyama and look to absorb all the energy. When the opponent's near enough energy dry, make the pivot into Dusknoir and hope Dusknoir can 1v2. The opponent fire off another Sludge and it's Dusknoir time. I'm really hoping they don't have Brutal Swing, but as they've only thrown 4 Fairy Winds, this is another Brutal Swing variant of Galarian Weezing. I'm going to fire off 1 Hex and the Shadow Punch. Shadow Punch from this range will come quite close to knocking out, and we do force the first protection off the opponent. When I played this battle, I was like, does a non-stab Brutal Swing do more than a Side Strike? No, it does not. It does like 34%, a Side Strike would do 36. So I guess in hindsight that's not the best shield. However, as my opponent is very reluctant to send Mewtwo back into the arena, perhaps we can do something with energy. We make the catch back onto Dusknoir. I was hoping the opponent would let me farm him down, however they're not that silly. They send back out Mewtwo. This armored version doesn't hit particularly hard, but that side strike did far too much. One Shadow Punch simply won't cut it. I could fire off the next one, but regardless, we can even get Confusion down. A fair win farm down, the result would be the same with me taking a loss. GG's to that opponent. Heading into the next battle, what a lead. The opponent say switches into Jellicent and Drapion hits the field of play. So far so good. The opponent going to fire off a Surf, but Drapion able to survive 2, whereas they certainly do not survive 2 crunches. We tank the Surf, 1 Poison Sting and the Crunch, and Crunch instantly puts them into the yellow health. My opponent throws the Surf after 2 hexes, using a 3-turn move. Against a Poison Sting or any 2-turn move user, they should have thrown an odd number. I would have only got 1 free turn instead to give me a free Poison Sting. The opponent shields the first. This one isn't thrown at the best timing. However, I'm more than happy to force the opponent all shields down. The opponent does hex farm me down, and I'm going to send out Dusknoir. This is probably a Surf bait, but let's not get nuked through 2 Protect Shields. The opponent fire off the Surf. They're able to reach the Shadow Wall. Dusknoir Greninja, not a great matchup. Of course, we do have access to Dynamic Punch. I'm going to fire off the Dynamic Punch just before the opponent reaches the Night Slash. I hope this one shot actually doesn't. The opponent makes a very clever play, anticipating the snipe, and out comes Talonflame. In theory, Hariyama is completely walled here. However, Force Palm doesn't look all that resisted, putting them below half health. The opponent opts to instant throw. I remember this battle vividly. So here, what I should do is fire off 2 hexes and the Shadow Punch, not taking the Incinerate. However, the issue is I wasn't sure it'd knock out from there, so I get the max amount of fast move pressure. And now we're tasked with tanking a charge move. The opponent interestingly go for a Hydro Cannon, probably thinking Hydro Cannon does more. However, it doesn't. A super effective Night Slash does exactly the same as a Hydro Cannon. Either way, we're able to survive and take that game. Heading into the next battle, we see another Panda Bear in the lead. The opponent say switch into the Balloon. Interesting running Hex. I think Drifloon or Hex is kind of like Dusknoir. A lot of people opt for the Astonish for fast move pressure, but I think Hex is just so much more flexible. They are insanely quick to these Icy Winds. If you opt for Astonish, you're 5-4, 5-4 to Icy Wind. On Hex is 4-3, 4-3. Leaps and bounds quicker. Despite the opponent being quicker, Drapion should be able to maintain alignment or force a Protect Shield. As the opponent instantly pivot out of the Panda Bear, I wouldn't even be that sad if the opponent invested a Protect Shield and I got to Dynamic Punch him to the face with my Dusknoir. The opponent gets a very nice Karate Chop farm down, meaning we're going to have to tank a close combat. I don't want to go down a Protect Shield. We know we survived this move despite it hurting quite a lot. I then pivot into Dusknoir, anticipating the opponent pivoting out. They don't actually instant pivot. I think if they would have actually stayed in there rather than go for the classic U switch, I switch, I would have been in trouble. Well, as I say that, it looks like the opponent trying to fully mod slap farm down Dusknoir. Is that possible? In the moment I thought, nah, no shot. I look at my health and I'm thinking, crap, it actually looks quite possible. Thankfully, the opponent recognised. We're at the next Shadow Punch, opt to force a Protect Shield, but it's simply too little too late. Shadow Punch, going to remove Golurk from the field of play, pivot back out into Hariyama with 1 Force Palm off the upper hand, and upper hand is easily going to pick up that 1-hit KO. GG's to that opponent. Heading into the next battle. Hariyama into Swampert, a type neutral matchup. However, the opponent opts to pivot out into Gliscopod, which has been causing me all sorts of problems, and Drapion hits the field of play. I'm sure you channel regulars would have noticed that is a purified Swampert, and you know how much I hate purified Pokemon, and I'm going to be insanely sad if I lose to a purified Swampert. Well, if I in return, I'll let him off, but I highly doubt it. We've seen this matchup play out before. I'm always willing to take shield advantage. I think Dusknoir have a shield advantage is pretty good against almost everything. We're able to force a Protect Shield. I think hardly any Gliscopod are running Aerial Ace this season, as Aerial Ace is a garbage move and both Exeter and Aqua Jet are pretty good, so I can just send out Hariyama, tank a charge move, and I'm going to look for that aggressive Force Palm farm down, which we're able to get. Uh-oh, out comes Mandibuzz. If they're on Snarl, I'd be alright here, but it's an Air Slash variant, which is a huge core breaker for my 2 remaining Pokemon, but the first upper hand gets the defense drop. Hariyama able to reach the next one, which also goes unshielded, doing almost all the remaining HP. The opponent pivots back out into Swampert and Dusknoir hits the field of play. We can tank any one move. We tank the first Hydro Cannon. I actually fire off the Dynamic Punch. I was hoping this would do enough to put me in a range where I can Hex farm down, but it simply doesn't. So when using Dusknoir, Dynamic Punch, despite not getting same type attack bonus, is more energy efficient and of course does more damage overall. I maximise my farm, 3 hexes and the Shadow Punch, one single turn before the next Hydro Cannon's reached. The opponent put all the hopes and dreams on Mandibars. I don't often bait, but I am baiting this very annoying bulky Vulture, anticipating the shield. We force the shield, we're able to reach the Dynamic Punch. Oof, from a very, very scary spot, we're just about able to emerge victorious. GG's, and thanks for playing. Heading into the next battle, we see Malamar on the lead. Somewhat of an issue, so I'm more than happy just to stay in. We go straight for the upper hand. Upper hand goes unshielded, and this Malamar suddenly doesn't look all that scary after all. We pivot into Drapion. The opponent bank a boatload of energy and send out their own Drapion. Oh man, this is such a boring mirror match. So what do we talk about here? I hope everyone's having a lovely Tuesday. Is it Tuesday? I think it's Monday, I don't know. I woke up from night shift and here I am at a shoutcasting PvP, talking a load of nonsense as always, which I'm sure a lot of you are used to. On a more serious note, I think the opponent probably should have chipped and dipped. I understand why you'd want to bank a boatload of energy. However, if you're going to enter this boring mirror behind an energy, you're going to have to make the first shield decision or straight up lose. Either way, I'm not complaining. I take shield advantage. I'll take switch. Let's see what the opponent wants to do. Finally, the Drapion mirror comes to an end and out comes Lapras. I'm going to fire off this crunch. I don't want to get fully away farm down, so I'm aggressively going to send Hariyama back into the battlefield. I've got 2 shields. I'm going to shield this and force the opponent to superpower when Malamar inevitably re-enters the arena. I promise this is not foul play range trainer. The opponent go for the foul play. We've now received the energy for the upper hand, and it looks like Hariyama actually wins CMP. Did I know that? If I'm being honest, no I did not. But it works out for me. I actually went for an undercharge, looking to get a small amount of farm. Unfortunately, unable to do so. Dusknoir enters the arena, the opponent throws on alignment, and that is going to be the final nail in their coffin. We shoot at the Sparkling Aura. We're going to start unleashing the Shadow Punch spam. If the opponent's smart, they probably let this go, recognising this game's over. They shield it and then concede the match. GG's, and that is why you should not bait. Heading into the next battle, we see the very annoying, ever bulky Zygarde, aka Optimus Prime. However, after using Hariyama, Optimus Prime might not be that bulky after all. These Force Palms doing crazy damage and we're able to get the defense drop. This is probably a crunch or bulldoze. However, most people that run Zygarde have Gastro on the back, so alignment is going to be key for me. Unfortunately, despite the defense drop, unable to Force Palm down, so going to fire off the next upper hand, removing Zygarde from the field of play. Out comes Grumpig. We make the pivot into Drapion, the opponent looking at some chip and dip action, so it looks like it probably isn't Gastrodon. As if it was Gastrodon, I think that Dynamic Punch was a waste of energy. Out comes Lapras, so not the team I was expecting whatsoever. We fire off the first crunch, unable to get the defense drop. Let's try again. The second crunch also goes unshielded, and right on cue, there is the defense drop. Of course, we're just going to have to let Drapion go down. I've still got a bit of Hariyama around. I send out Hariyama, go straight for the upper hand, looking to move them from the field of play. To my surprise, the opponent actually shielded. We then Simul swap, Dusknoir into Grumpig. Early we lost. I believe this can only be a Dynamic Punch. However, am I going to lose to Zygarde? Absolutely fucking not. No bait. We'll be saving this pig's fate. We fire off 1 hex and the Shadow Punch, 1 further hex and the next Shadow Punch. Grumpig, you absolute fraud. Get yourself off my screen. Back out comes Lapras. No one move. Will knock out. Ice Beam would do more than a Sparkling Aura. Sparkling Aura doesn't get the job done. We reach the next Shadow Punch, and that is going to be all she wrote. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure why they shielded Lapras, but I'm very grateful they did. Heading into the next battle, we see Hariyama into Swampert. Nice to see the GOAT making a return today. I haven't seen too many Swamperts in Ultra League in a while, but it looks like it's back on the rise. Probably because it's got access to Sludge, meaning stuff like Virizion isn't as miserable as it used to be. We fire off the upper hand, getting the defense drop. The opponent then sends out Pidgeot. I'm more than happy to stay in, knowing that second gust will not register before the upper hand's reached. Upper hand instantly puts them below half health. We actually got the defense drop both times there. This move's busted. It's meant to be 30%, but it feels definitely more like the Scald days. At least 50-50. I can now send out Drapion, fire off the crunch before the Brave Birds reach, and I instantly pivot into Dusknoir, anticipating Swampert re-entering the arena. Back out comes Swampert. Shadow Punch forces the opponent's final Protect Shield. I've got 2. Hydro Cannon is survivable. We want to keep some health. We shield at the Hydro Cannon. The opponent already another one. I don't know what's in the back, so I'm willing to tank 1. Does around 50%. I'm then going to look to throw 3 hexes and the Shadow Punch. However, my opponent doesn't allow that, instead sending out Primate. We heavily overfarm, fire off the first Shadow Punch, and this is Dusknoir closing strong once again. I just under-tap this charge move, fire off the next Shadow Punch. We've already seen the first one does around 50% of their health. This one certainly will KO. We're only 1 hex off the next Shadow Punch, and Dusknoir once again gonna close insanely quickly. GG's, and thanks for playing. And that is just about going to wrap things up for the Shadow Hariyama showcase. As requested by members of my Discord, I'm a man of the people. If you want to see a Shadow Pokemon in action, post it down below and I will put it to work. Does Upper Hand, a very cheap, a very good charge move, and the oppressive Force Palm make Hariyama now a meta threat. I'll be honest, I'm not really sure this meta is the correct meta for Hariyama. There are so many anti-fighters running around, hence fighters are nowhere to be seen. Poor old Annihilate and Primate, nothing but Spice or perhaps anti-meta picks. However, that being said, if you get it in a type neutral matchup, that combination is just ridiculous, making quick work of even some of the bulkiest Pokemon. Without a doubt, the star of the show once again was Dusknoir. Holy crap, why did it take me so long to run the Hex version? It is phenomenal. But if you're enjoying the content, smash that like button if you're new, consider subscribing if you like your battles featured on my channel. A link to my battle submission form is down below. And as always, a huge thanks to everyone for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.